Going back to an earlier installment to a video game franchise you love can be a somewhat daunting task. Sometimes the originals just don't hold up in modern times due to outdated visuals and questionable design choices. Components from the 80s don't always hold up in the present. That is why I am launching a new series that I call Banditex's Guide to, where I take a look at multiple versions of the same game, try to find the definitive version, or in a few cases, try to fix the game if possible. For my first video in this series, I'm going to take a look at the original Super Mario Bros. On the NES. But before I begin, I want to explain how the format is going to work, as well as leave a little disclaimer. To start with the disclaimer, whatever version of any game is definitive is a matter of opinion. Some people will prefer the version with better graphics and nothing else, and that is totally fine. Others will like the original over any other re-release, as that is the original game in its most raw form. What I will pick from my definitive version will differ from game to game, but I will do my best to try to make my pick appealing for as many viewers as possible. As for the format, I'm going to begin with the original version, deliver my brief thoughts on it, and then tackle re-releases in order from oldest to most recent. Some games have emulated ports, and for these, I will be ignoring them, since it's often not worth splitting the hairs on them. For instance, the Wii Virtual Console version is just the original version with the Wii's Virtual Console hiccups in tow. Besides, for this video, I have 6 versions to cover, all officially released by Nintendo. With that said, let's begin. I'm happy to report that the original Super Mario Bros. Holds up pretty damn well for a game released in 1985. The level design is good, the core gameplay is simple, and the music is catchy. I'm also a fan of how Mario handles in this game. Sure, Mario is heavier than most recent entries, but I think with enough practice, you'll manage. SMB is a pretty short game, all things considered. You have 8 worlds to clear with 4 levels in each, and it should take you a little over 30 minutes to do it. Upon finishing the game, you're given the option to replay the game in a slightly harder difficulty. This mode will replace every Goomba with a Buzzy Beetle, and speed up all the shell-based enemies. Some levels in Super Mario Bros. Are repeats, with later versions of the same stage having more hazards like smaller platforms or random bullet bills. In hard mode, you will only play the harder variants, and the later versions won't change. While I think there's some fun to be had with Super Mario Bros., there are some flaws. The graphics haven't aged the best, the 2-player mode with Luigi only switches whenever a player dies, there aren't many extra lives present, and while there are no continues, there is a cheat to put you at the start of the world you got a game over in. So with those issues in mind, let's begin by tackling the later versions to see how they improve on the Super Mario Bros. Experience. Up first is Versus Super Mario Bros. This is an arcade conversion made by Nintendo shortly after the original was completed. This game rearranges a few blocks and power-ups to throw off players that mastered the original game, adds more enemies, and in some cases increases the timer speed and/or increasing the amount of coins needed for an extra life. That's the basic gist, but some stages in this game are completely different to what they were before, and may look familiar to some. That's not a coincidence, as these new levels were reused in The Lost Levels, the Japanese sequel to Super Mario Bros. These newer levels kind of suck if I'm being honest. Lost Levels had things like enemy bouncing and wind gusts, and this game doesn't, so some jumps are much harder here than they ever were in the Lost Levels. The difficulty curve in general is pretty poor. You'll just play a world or two and then be hit with a spike and challenge, only for it to drop back down after that. It's inconsistent, and I see it as a flaw. Lastly, and I don't know if this was just a me issue, but the version on the Nintendo Switch has input lag. One of the many great things about Super Mario Bros. Is how it plays. So I actually really hated this version up until I emulated it in MAME. With that said, I'm still putting this below the original version due to the difficulty spikes, and since the hard mode is missing, with this being the only version missing it. Still though, this isn't an awful version of Super Mario Bros. It's just not a good substitute for the original. I can only recommend this version to those that have played the original hundreds of times and want a slight remix. In fact, I think the only improvement here is the fact that the continues are more obvious, but since this is an arcade title, you will have to pump more quarters in. Still though, this is just Super Mario Bros., but more annoying in some cases. Up next is an odd one. This is Night Nippon Super Mario Bros. This version of the game was made as a collaboration between Nintendo and the Nippon Broadcasting Station to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the All Night Nippon radio show. The game itself was initially a prize on the show, but was made available for purchase in small quantities, making this a rare version of the game. The game, surprisingly, is built off of the lost levels rather than the original, which is good because some levels were swapped once again. Most levels are their original SMB versions, just with lost levels, visuals, and mechanics like the enemy bouncing returning. No poison mushrooms though. Speaking of visuals, the biggest one by far is that some enemies are designed after Japanese celebrities. I don't know who most of these guys are, and I won't bother pronouncing their names either since I'm always afraid of saying them wrong.
I don't know you, but I'm sure you're a jerk. Hey, I've only been here a few minutes. What's going on?
There are also two major changes, both of which are likely a byproduct of this using lost levels as the base. To start, the multiplayer mode is gone, and instead you can play the entire game as Luigi. Luigi jumps higher than Mario, but he's really slippery, and while I normally prefer Luigi, here I hate how he plays, so I stuck with Mario. Lastly, you have more worlds to play. By finishing the game, a star will be added to the title screen. Get 8 and you can play worlds A, B, C, and D. The last thing I'll say is that the hard mode is back, but it will go away once you shut the game off. While the game saves how many times you've cleared it, it won't save your overall progress, so make sure you finish 8-4 before shutting the game off. I prefer this version to Versus, but due to the graphical changes made, I still can't put this above the original. But I encourage you to check it out if you're curious. It's a very unique game, and also a better version of Versus Super Mario Bros. Plus, this is the only version of Super Mario Bros. With a unique Luigi. Up next is the All-Stars version. If you're unfamiliar with this game, it is a remake compilation on the Super Nintendo. Think of the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane trilogy, but with Mario instead. You got Super Mario Bros., The Lost Levels, The American Mario 2, and Super Mario Bros. 3. One version has Super Mario World as well, though this version has different graphics for Luigi, and an extra save file for that game. We're only going to focus on Super Mario Bros. For now though. As this game is on a better console, this means that All-Stars uses a remixed soundtrack, as well as enhanced visuals. The visuals in particular are a huge improvement, with there being much more colors available and even new animations for when you save the mushroom retainers. There's some new songs too, these being for the Bowser fights as well as the title screen. A save feature with 4 save slots has been added, which will allow players to start at the beginning of the world. Some glitches were fixed, hitboxes were altered to make more sense, and the multiplayer mode now switches after levels and after dying. Much better. In fact, All-Stars in general is one of the best remake compilations ever made in my opinion. So much of the original game's DNA is present, and all of the changes improve the experience. My only problem with the compilation is a bug present in both Super Mario Bros. And The Lost Levels. You see, whenever you hit a brick block, you don't bounce off it, but instead pass through. This is an adaptable change, though still just wrong as a whole. Really though, if this is the worst thing I can say about the entire compilation, then I'd say that's a good thing. The All-Stars remake is by far the best version I've looked at already, but we have 2 more games to look at. How did these fare to All-Stars? Well, one thing I will say is that Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color is not topping All-Stars, which is a shame because they did try to make this game great. Deluxe is a Game Boy Color remake of the NES game. Since the GBC and the NES are both 8-bit consoles, Deluxe attempts to copy the NES graphics, and it does a remarkable job too. Luigi's sprites have also been updated, with his fire form now being his original color scheme, where before he looked exactly like Fire Mario with a fire flower. On the surface, this is basic Super Mario Bros., complete with the extra hard mode available after finishing the game, but there is plenty of new content. Starting with the album, this is essentially an achievement system. Do a thing, get a little prize. In this case, you get photos that can be printed off with the Game Boy printer for doing basic tasks. These all amount to kill this enemy, find a 1-up, but pages 4 and 5 stand out. These are big pictures that require you to defeat Bowser with the fire flower in each world. Sounds easy, right? It does, but remember that getting hit once means that you go back to Small Mario. World 7 in particular only has about 3 power-ups in total, so this might be the most difficult one to do in the game, at least for the main portion. To complete the album, you also need to play through a few of the other modes, like the new challenge mode. This mode is basically the standard 32 stages from the base game, though now you have 3 tasks to complete. These involve the player collecting all 5 red coins, the hidden Yoshi egg, and clearing the point threshold. You don't need to do all 3 to get the medals associated with each task, but you do need all 5 red coins in one run for the red coin medal. The point requirements can be pretty strict sometimes, but once you understand SMB's point system, you won't struggle much. I have a few tips for this mode if you're having trouble. 1. Get fireworks. Fireworks go off if you finish with the 1, 3, or 6 on the last digit of the timer, with the amount corresponding to the number. So in other words, finish with the 6 on the timer each and every time. Next, and this is also related to the flagpole, try to touch the top each time. Not only will you get 5,000 points, but if you finish with the 6, you'll get an extra 3,000. Third, chain enemy kills. Bounce on multiple enemies at once, kick Koopa and Buzzy Beetle shells, and do the infinite 1-up trick wherever you can. This will give you a shitload of points. 4. Collect every coin in Coin Heaven. Yes, this is achievable. Not only does each coin give you 200 points, but you'll get an extra 10,000 points on top of the thousands you'll get from the many coins. 5. Grab just about any important item you can, i.e. Fire Mario? Good, grab another flower. Do you know where the hidden 1-up is? Grab it. This goes for the red coins and the Yoshi eggs too, so make sure you have a guide nearby to assist you, if you cannot remember where they are. The final tip I have is simple. You gotta go fast. Do not just speed run the levels, you need to make sure you hit all of these little pit stops to scoop up some extra points. At the same time, you need to get a good time bonus. Not only do you need high scores to get the high score medals, but every high score adds to this bar at the bottom of the screen. Max that and you'll get a new photo for the album, in addition to the other 3 tied to getting every score medal, every Yoshi egg, and every red coin. Oh yeah, you also cannot die at any point in the stage, since the checkpoints are removed altogether. Speaking of points, getting 300,000 in the standard game will unlock Super Mario Bros. For super players. This is a port of levels from the Lost Levels. I won't say too much right now about it since this video is about the original Super Mario Bros., but there is an album photo tied to finishing this game. 2 photos are also linked to this version's unique multiplayer mode, which I couldn't do. There is a single-player version called You vs. Boo, which has the player racing a Boo to the end of the stage. If you manage to be fast enough, you'll unlock different colored Boos that are much faster. I like a lot of changes made to this version, however there is one major problem with this release: the screen crunch. I find myself falling into pits more often and being smacked by enemies and hazards a lot more in this release. This can actually make the extra stuff much more annoying to deal with. I really do love the new challenge mode, but you just don't have enough space to see everything coming at you. For this reason, I really can't recommend this version, which is a damn shame. They tried with this version, they really did, but this flaw hurts the entire package. The last one is a weird oddity from NES Remix 2 on the Wii U. This is Super Luigi Bros. The idea is simple. It's a ROM hack of Super Mario Bros. Where you play as Luigi instead, but the game is mirrored and Luigi jumps higher. Here's the kicker though. Luigi jumps higher, but only when he's moving slowly. Once you start running, you'll jump lower, but it's actually the same height as Mario from the original. As a result, the Luigi aspect of this game feels lazy to me. As if they had an idea they wanted to do, but couldn't fully code Luigi correctly. Luigi's missing his trademark slippery physics, so this game doesn't even have that. I don't have too much to say, this is just a really lazy ROM hack that Nintendo made themselves. In fact, I'm actually putting this at the bottom of my rankings, since there's barely any special differences between the original and this one, and what is different hurts the game. You can find much better SMB hacks that have a playable Luigi. So in conclusion, what is the best version of Super Mario Bros.? It's the All-Stars remake by far. It has the best graphics, sounds, a save feature, improves on some glitches, and it plays almost identically to the original, minus the one brick block issue. But what if I told you that there is a fix for this bug? For those that use emulators or EverDrives, you can find a simple ROM patch online that will remove the glitch for both this game and the Lost Levels as well. It's super simple, and it even works with the version of Super Mario World. So if you haven't played Super Mario Bros., this would be my recommended method of doing it. Honestly though, you can't go wrong with most of these versions anyway. but I would suggest that you avoid Versus on Switch, Super Luigi Bros, and the Deluxe version. That does it for this video. Let me know what you thought of this new series. I would love to do more of these, and would like these to replace the segments in my main reviews where I compare versions. Either way, thank you for watching.